Order. Thank you. Lovely. We are recording.
We just started recording and I can go ahead and share the rules now.
Okay, please do. Thank you.
Alrighty, can everyone see my screen?
Yes.
Great. This meeting has been called to conduct the business of the City of Boulder. Activities that disrupt, delay, or otherwise interfere with the meeting are prohibited. The time for speaking or asking questions is limited to 3 minutes. No person shall speak except when recognized by the person presiding, and no person shall speak longer than the 3 minutes allotted. Each person shall register to speak at the meeting using that person's real name. Any person believed to be using a name other than the one they are commonly known by will not be permitted to speak at the meeting. No video will be permitted except for city officials, employees, and invited speakers. All others will participate by voice only. The person presiding at the meeting shall enforce these rules by muting anyone who violates any rule. The chat function is enabled, and this will be used for individuals to communicate with the host. It should be used for technical online platform related questions only. If an attendee attempts to use chat for any other reason seeking assistance from the host, the city reserves the right to disable that individual's access to chat. Only the host and individuals designated by the host will be permitted to share their screen during the meeting. Thanks, Tila.
Thank you very much. All right, we will proceed. Hi, everyone. And now we are 4. We are going to proceed first with the consideration and approval of the minutes from our last meeting, from the February meeting. Do any tab members have any comments, revisions, additions, corrections to the minutes? I see none. I didn't either. Nice job again, Madam Secretary. The one question that I had, and I didn't have a chance to go, well, I had a chance. I didn't take an opportunity to check today to see, there was a request made during Jean Sanson's presentation last time, because there are sometimes with her updates, some slides, and I had asked that those to become a regular part of the materials that are posted along with the official materials for each meeting. I didn't check to make sure that those have gone on there. I did see the request made it into the minutes. So if they haven't, then I would request that those happen again, and on an ongoing basis that we should be doing that. But yes, Meredith.
They were sent out to committee members, the presentation. However, we don't have to practice post PowerPoints. So I did.
Okay, you're right. That would be the presentation. Thank you. Understood. Thank you for that clarification. That makes a lot of sense.
Perfect. Thanks.
Okay. Erica, you've unmuted. Did you have something to pitch in here?
I'm aware of your request, and like Meredith says, she sent it out via email, but I'm talking with our internal communications folks to see whether or not we can post them online.
Okay. Yeah, as a practical matter, our emails as tab members are public record as well. So there was just that part that I was, concerned was getting skipped. And so it's a little harder for a member of the public to find, but it would be available if someone submitted a core request for those things. Okay. I will entertain a motion to approve the minutes if we have no further discussion on them. Hutch, did you?
So move.
Okay. I'll second. The minutes, seeing no consternation, the minutes are approved. Lovely, thank you. Minutes are approved. Okay. As I have mentioned, and now we are 4, most of the people who are on this call are aware of what has transpired last week during City Council's nomination of new board members. We knew that this was Hutch's last meeting. What we didn't realize was the last meeting was Mark McIntyre's last meeting, because he got appointed to the planning board. So we have 2 people to say goodbye to, and one of them is not here. Mark had already told us he was going to be out of town, and his connection isn't good enough, and he's not a member of the board anymore, so he's not going to take any extraordinary measures to join us. He did email a nice message to fellow tab members. I don't know if he also sent a message to city staff, but he in general expressed his gratitude and just the pleasure that he had to serve and to meet us. I thought he was a lovely colleague, we will, of course, I'm sure still see some more of him, but I did wanted to mark his passing as a member of the Transportation Advisory Board. He's moved on to be a member of the Planning Board. So feel free to reach out. I thought he was a wonderful colleague. If anyone else would like to say anything, that's terrific. He was hoping to be here, and I'm sure we'll see him again, as I said.
Well, there's a functional gap that he left for us when nobody else had anything to say. He had something to say, so somebody else is going to have to step up. Probably one of the people that are sitting on the phone on the call now. So I'm sorry, I can't help with that personally, given my status.
Right. Well, I do see that the two probable new members, they won't be appointed until tomorrow evening, but the two likely members are on and watching. Training, I see your hand up. You will have a chance to speak as a member of the public in just a moment in public comment. But we are going to also have to say goodbye to Hutch, my friend and neighbor, and a hungry one this evening, apparently.
I get kicked out of the house tomorrow, so we have no kitchen, so I'm having weird things. Sorry about that.
To my house. Well, Hutch, I remember when you were considering applying to TAB, and we took a long walk around the neighborhood, and it's something that I really like doing with people who are into it and want to think about it, and deep thoughts and deep thinking. The breadth of experience that you've brought to TAB has been really helpful. It's a very interesting perspective that most of us don't have. It's much more informed by your global work and sort of big picture thinking. And so I do appreciate at least that change and that shift in lens for us. So I did want to acknowledge that your tenure has been short. I don't know what you have planned next, but I hope good things for you, my friend.
Well, I've told some people I will take a short sabbatical and then be at it in some role or other. We just don't know what yet.
Great. I think Erica has something to say as well, perhaps.
Just wanted to say thank you, Hutch, for your service to the community, your service to TAB, and your supportive staff throughout the years. As mentioned to you earlier, you came in during the period of COVID and everything's been virtual. You leave during that same period, but I hope that at some point in the future, we'll get to meet person, and just want to say thank you for bringing the outside world beyond just simply Boulder, Colorado, or even the United States in, and offering that perspective, and your kind graciousness was greatly appreciated. So thank you very much for that.
Thank you, Erica.
Mm-hmm. Thanks. Ryan, go ahead.
So, Hutch, speaking of functional gaps, I think you are the gentlest of the current TAB members, and I'll miss you and your big picture thinking and ability to just kind of keep us moving forward in a really constructive way. And I'm grateful that you've helped me get to know how things work over the last year. So thank you, Hutch. Good luck. And Mark, I've said some words to him, but I guess I would just say also on the topic of functionality, Mark's going to planning board, which has much to do with some of the things that this board thematically has an interest in, which is land use and zoning. And so I've told Mark I expect him to be the next transportation liaison at planning, but that's just my my hope. So in any case, thank you both, Hutch and Mark. It's been great working with you here.
Thanks, Ryan. Yeah, I was thinking of Mark during looking at the stuff for the subcommunity portion of the meeting tonight, and hoping he's done his homework for us anyway, because he'll have to do it anyhow on planning board. Alex, my tab is right over there. No, you don't have. Okay. The view I have of my screen is making it a little unclear who's got hands up and not. Oh, Erica does again.
Thank you. It's keeping the honors going. I know that Mark has termed off or come off of the board so that he can eventually, hopefully, he's been nominated for, appointed, whatever, waiting for that to be official on the planning board. But just want to say thank you for helping lead the charge to have really wonderful, great, and community-focused and centric goals for the transportation master plan. And so I think that's a very strong legacy that he'll leave, for TAB and for the community and for all of us. And just wanted to offer some gratitude for that. So thank you very much for your leadership in that fashion.
Thanks, Erica. I did mention his written, farewell to fellow TAB members, and he concluded by sort of trying to keep 3 poll stars in mind. One, we have to do better on snow cleanup. To keep the TMP goals sort of top of mind. Here are the main things that we're trying to do, and try to measure every effort that we have against those goals, and make sure that we keep advancing them every opportunity that we have, which I think is a great thing to keep in mind. And then his third one was to remember sort of the latest charge by council: be bold and get stuff done. So that's I think those are going to be helpful things. Hutch, is there anything you want to leave us with as something to point our compasses towards as we lose the benefit of your monthly contributions?
I was thinking about whether I should contribute something of that sort. I mean, there's a couple of things I've been fairly consistent about, and one of them has been to not get too lost in too many weeds. And I know the process forces us into weeds sometimes, but I really enjoyed Alex's pattern recognition that he shared with both the council and with us in the last meeting. And I think that's a super important role for TAB in particular, to always have a way to do that pattern recognition, even when we're worried about, whether street A or street B gets speed management. And I guess the other thing is hopefully Ryan and Alex and others can continue my habit of looking beyond Boulder, because I do think that it's a little bit easy to get stuck here, and hopefully that bringing things from outside Boulder will continue.
Thank you, Hutch. Yeah, that was pretty important right at the beginning of your tenure. COVID had hit, we were remote. We really didn't know, the streets were closed down, people wanted to walk in them, we didn't know what to do. And so you were pretty good at helping us harness some of that angst and submit, some suggestions and report to council about what other cities were doing as part of the pandemic response. So I wanted to recognize your leadership on that, and thank you. All right, is that all the love we have for Hutch at the moment? All right, I'm gonna move along then. We're gonna move along to public comment. Hutch, thank you for your service. I'll see you walking your dog,
Yeah, that's right.
I'll see you on the street. You'll be the man on the street again. But thank you for your service. Okay, we're gonna move right now to the public comment period. We do not have any public hearing items this evening, and so this would be the chance for members of the public who would wish to share or vent or suggest or otherwise talk to TAB and staff about transportation matters in the city. We will go, usually we have 3 minutes per speaker. I see no particular reason to deviate from that this evening. So if you are interested in speaking, please feel free to raise your hand now, and we will call you in order. I'm not seeing any hands up.
Oh, I see. Okay. Lynn's hand just popped up.
There you go.
And then Amanda Mansfield.
Okay.
So Lynn, I will go ahead and pull up the 3-minute timer. Just one moment. And all right, Lynn, you can go ahead and speak.
Just waiting to be last.
Sorry, I'll give you that extra 10 seconds back.
Right. Let's see. The video windows, we must be the most regressive city in the United States to, after 2 years, still not have video windows for our public. And I challenge you to take all your video windows off and see what it feels like to just be talking to a black box. You know, it's bad enough that we have COVID. This is not rocket science. It's just a video window. And guess what? I went to speak out at the Capitol opposing modular nuclear reactors. And guess what? I had a video window. It's a miracle. It's modern technology. Let's do it. And I know that you're going to say in response, we're just a board. But you know what? I've done it at city council. I've done it at all the boards, and I'll keep on doing it over and over again until somebody snaps out of it. And you got to kick it up to the council because you're having to listen to this from me each time. And I've got other things to talk about. I really do. Like Whittier Place. When are we going to find out what happened there with the fire? I ride my bike there every day, you know, and I can't ride on that side of the street. I have to ride on the crosswalk on the other side of the street. Is that just going to be like a burnt out shell of a place for years? Like no word on that whatsoever. Where's the ex officio on from planning board here? Because this is what needs to be the combination of the tab and the planning department. And once again, East Boulder working group, you know, the minority groups don't want to be stuck in an industrial area. They want nice neighborhoods. And this is just an excuse to get more people packed into Boulder, which is not desirable anymore. It's, you know what, the green building that was going to happen for Marshall Fire, it's not the green building that's expensive, it's the demand for housing here. We need to cramp down on housing, and TAB needs to make a stand on speaking out against CU South. Berkeley had a lawsuit, you know, against their developer, and for a capitation on student population there, and Boulder needs to do that.
Thank you, Lynn.
And next up, I have Amanda. You can go ahead and start speaking.
Hi, my name's Amanda Mansfield. I just wanted to introduce myself. I'm the new Senior Manager of Transportation at Boulder Transportation Connections. Oh, can you hear me?
Yes.
I'm sorry. And apologies for starting my video. Anyway, just wanted to say hi. And I haven't had a chance to meet all the TAB members yet, so I look forward to working with you guys in the future. And I'm excited to attend this meeting. It's my first TAB meeting, so thanks for having me.
Thank you, Amanda. Nice to meet you. I did get your email when you first got on board, so we'll be in touch. I look forward to working with you.
Same here.
Thank you.
And Lynn, I understand we are going to go back to in-person meetings sometime this year, possibly as early as June. I don't know, but it's coming. It's coming. I hear your frustration about the videos, but your time in the dark is nearly over. Do we have any other members of the public?
That is all I see.
Okay. Going once. I do see we have a member of council on here. I don't make them speak, but I do want to point out you are Madam Spear. You are definitely welcome to chime in if you would like to. We always love to see council members. Seeing how the sausage is made over here.
Yeah, I can just say hello, and I just really want to thank you all for being here for yet another virtual meeting that you all are getting through. I too am looking forward to being back in person. Thanks especially to Hutch. I know this is your last meeting here. Thank you so much for all the service that you put into this board. And I know Mark's not here, but thanks to Mark as well. Really looking forward to having his perspective on planning as well. And for the soon to be, hopefully, new members that will get officially voted on tomorrow night, just welcome and thank you all.
Thank you very much.
Thanks for letting me listen in tonight.
Thanks, Nicole. All right, I see no further hands, and so we are going to bring the public comment period to a close and move right along. It has been noted to me, this feels like a very light agenda. We will talk about it later on in the meeting under matters, and in particular, probably at next meeting. But a lot of staff's work on things that were ongoing has paused while they're concentrating on the CAN, the Core Arterial Network project, and their emphasis. And so that's sort of, if that helps explain people who are regular viewers why we are not going into some very familiar subjects, it's because they're focusing on the CAN work right now. But we have had for a while the East Boulder Subcommunity draft plan underway, and so we have members of staff tonight to update us on that and brief us about the status of that planning work. Hi, Kathleen.
Hello.
Mhm.
Okay, am I up?
Yes, I see you. I
Okay.
don't. All right.
Great, thank you. We have a staff presentation, so I'm going to share my screen. Give me just a sec. See, share, and we'll go to this. There we go. Everything looking good? Okay, great. Thank you so much for having me tonight. Kathleen King from Comprehensive Planning. I've been managing the East Boulder planning process for the past couple of years. And tonight I'm joined by my colleague from Transportation, Jean Sanson. We're here to present the latest draft of the East Boulder Subcommunity Plan and the 55th and Arapahoe Station Area Plan. We've taken feedback that TAB provided on the 60% draft plan back in July of last year and worked to incorporate your recommendations along with some of the community recommendations into this, which is the latest version of the plans. This will be the last time that TAB reviews the plan before we pursue adoption. So we're looking for your feedback to inform any refinements that are needed to the plan. And we'll use tonight's feedback to make final edits to these documents. And we'll be sharing your feedback with Planning Board later this month, and then City Council in April, when they also make some final recommendations for updates. So we're in the final stage of the East Boulder Subcommunity Planning process. To date, we've completed 5 phases of work, and now we're going through our final task, which is plan documentation and adoption. Some of the key questions to help guide your discussion tonight are, does TAB support the connections plan and mobility recommendations included in both the East Boulder Subcommunity Plan and the 55th and Arapahoe Station Area Plan? And then also, what feedback does TAB have to further refine those recommendations? I'm going to walk through the main deliverables included in the subcommunity plan and provide some information about changes that we've made to both of these documents since we met last July. So as you may recall, there are 4 major deliverables of the East Boulder Subcommunity Plan. First, there's a land use plan, which is pretty similar to what you saw at the 60% draft, but we've made some updates and modifications to some of the tools included in this section of the plan. There is a connections plan, and we'll talk through the changes that we've made to that section as well. And then there's a recommendations chapter, and that outlines policies, programs, and projects to help achieve the vision of the East Boulder Subcommunity Plan. So for those that really read through the document last time, this would be a new section that you haven't seen before. And so I imagine, folks will have some thoughts on this section in particular. And then the final kind of major deliverable is that 55th and Arapahoe Station Area Plan. So we refer to that as the stamp. It's another major tool that will offer more detailed recommendations for one of the key areas of change in East Boulder. So we'll start with the land use plan. There's a few changes since the 60% draft to the final recommended land use plan. We changed some of the light industrial areas to a community industrial category. And the intention behind that is to protect space for smaller service industrial uses along both Arapahoe and Velma. That's consistently been a concern raised by the community, and we got some of that feedback again in our last engagement window. And then another slight difference that you may have noticed is that we tried to better align some of our land use changes with open space and habitat protection areas, specifically around Boulder Creek and around the Humane Society site. We've also updated the plan to provide more detailed information about vision for different areas of change. So describing what community members are hoping to see in these areas related to building character, access, and walkability. And then we really dove deeper into recommendations for place types. So that place types tool that's included in this version of the document really got tweaked up a notch, I think, since you saw the 60% draft, and the level of information provided here will be used to guide future zoning decisions, as well as creation of potential form-based code for these areas. And that will help us deliver the types of changes that are in line with what the community has described as their vision for different neighborhoods. So I'll pass it to Jean to talk through the connections plan.
Great, thank you so much, Kathleen. So this chapter, I assume, would be of much interest to TAB. So stepping back a little bit, I mean, when we think about East Boulder today and we think about how it's evolved over the years, it's really designed for motor vehicles. And options to travel by any mode other than a vehicle are pretty limited. So dispersed patterns of development have grown up around the car, and what we see are street blocks that are typically long and disconnected. But as these land uses change and infill and redevelopment bring a greater mix of jobs and housing to the area, the transportation network and the mobility options should evolve to support this transformation. So supporting the network of businesses and new residents that Kathleen has described includes some major recommendations that will contribute to our access and mobility goals. And this chapter of the plan supports this vision and land use plan, while also responding to the many community comments we received about transportation needs and upgrades in the area. So let's start with this connections plan that you're looking at. New connections are intended to support new land uses by first improving access into and through these redevelopment areas. Second, expanding the pedestrian and bicycle network throughout the subcommunity. And then third, creating opportunities for street activation and vibrancy in these evolving neighborhoods. And the major recommendations of the connections plan should look pretty consistent with what was included in the 60% draft. And specifically in response to TAB feedback, we've updated our map to simplify recommendations and show the full system of proposed improvements. So what you're looking at is how the proposed connections are integrated into the existing network of roads and pedestrian and bicycle facilities. Next slide, Kathleen. Yeah, in the map you see here, the geographic extent of each new connection is describes the connections that you saw on the map in the prior slide, and the purpose or the intent of the new connection and the street type as it's defined in the DCS. The plan will be incorporated into our transportation master plan and replace portions of earlier network plans that covered East Boulder. Transportation improvements included in the connections plan will be installed by property owners as part of redevelopment and through city projects. And for these new connections, we also took a closer look at the stamp and revisited some of our initial recommendations. And in particular, we identified opportunities for more grade separated routes as per TAB's recommendations, and have included an additional recommendation for multi-use paths along Western Avenue and Range Street. Next slide, please. So another component of the transportation chapter is what we refer to as system enhancements. These are transportation network improvements that are recommended for consideration in the next TMP update to improve existing facilities for all modes of travel. The enhancements range in scale from completing missing sidewalks to initiating design of the 55th Street corridor to incorporate protected bicycle facilities. You'll also notice that in response to TAB feedback, we did build out recommendations for mobility hubs throughout the subcommunity and provided some additional guidance on areas that would be well served by mobility hubs of different scales. And next slide. I think we might be off one slide. I'm on system enhancements.
Give me a sec.
Sorry.
It's okay.
Here we go.
There we go.
All right, so great, thanks Kathleen. This next set of projects for future study may be located outside the areas of change in East Boulder, but they were identified by community members throughout the process and city staff as potential projects that warrant further study for future consideration or investment. So following adoption of the subcommunity plan, these projects should be tracked to determine when and how they're incorporated into future city departments' work plans. For example, preliminary engineering of the East Arapahoe corridor is a project that CDOT is initiating this year, while the potential for a Fast Tracks Northwest rail station at 55th Street is something that we've heard as a desire from our community and which we will continue to examine as rail discussions with RTD proceed. So with that, I will hand the presentation back over to Kathleen.
Great, thank you so much. So this is jumping into that last chapter and the third major deliverable. So this is a new piece of the plan, and this is where we're outlining recommendations for policies, programs, and projects that will help implement the transportation and mobility goals, which, as this group is well aware, those types of projects also impact our goals for design quality and placemaking, resilience and climate commitment, as well as local business. So the recommended policies are described first, and then the plan outlines potential programs and projects, key steps towards implementation, and offers some guidance on prioritization. So this tool will be used by city staff to develop future work plans, capital improvement planning, and develop partnerships throughout the community to implement these recommendations. The final major deliverable is the 55th and Arapahoe Station Area Plan. So I think as folks know, we had an opportunity to bring on a consultant team to provide greater detail for recommendations in this area of change because of the regional mobility hub planned at the 55th and Arapahoe station, which will be served by high quality, high frequency bus rapid transit in the future as part of the State Highway 7 BRT project that the city's been working on in collaboration with CDOT, RTD, and our neighboring communities. The stamp provides site-specific guidance on redevelopment strategies, key connections and mobility improvements, and the creation of a district to manage parking, among other needs in the area. The plan offers specific recommendations for right-of-way treatments for existing and new connections, and provides street sections to help local property owners and city staff deliver on mobility facility and urban design needs throughout this area. And then similar to the East Boulder plan, the stamp offers an implementation matrix that will be used to implement key programs and projects that will help realize the vision for the area. So those are the major components of the subcommunity plan. TAB is our first stop this month as we share the document out with city boards. We'll be posting the latest version of the draft plan to the city website this week and asking for community feedback through April 5th. Then we're going to share all the board and community feedback with City Council in April and ask for their final direction on edits and/or changes to the plan. And then really we're hoping to wrap up the documents and pursue adoption with Planning Board and Council. There will be a joint public hearing, which is scheduled for May, and then the two adopting bodies will deliberate and consider motions to adopt. So, I think if there's any kind of clarifying questions, we're happy to answer those. But if not, this board has really provided just excellent critical feedback throughout the process. So we'd love to hear more from you tonight on the updated drafts. And thank you so much.
Thank you very much, Kathleen.
Mm-hmm.
Tab, any questions? Clarifying questions before we give substantive feedback?
I noticed there's a couple of annexations. Is that a complex thing or a community driven thing? I'm not sure, particularly San Leandro. I'm not sure how that works.
Yeah, San Lazaro Mobile Home Park is recommended for annexation. It is considered a complex annexation, but we've been working with the property owner throughout the process, and they've actually submitted their materials to start to pursue that, I think last week.
Cool, thanks.
Mhm.
Kathleen, I was noting in the, oh, sorry, Ryan, just, it's a quick question. In the discussion in the memo on regional trail connections, that specifically, I didn't really see any things on the maps that were showing here's where we're thinking, and it might be just too early days, but they were specifically called out as potentially soft surface connections, which are really great for recreating, but they're not terrific transportation connections. They're slower to ride on. They're more difficult to clear after adverse weather. They get muddy. And so I was curious if there's a reason that there's an emphasis on soft surface trails here versus trying to actually make them resilient, hardy, and more widely usable by transportation minded people on bicycles.
I don't have an answer for that for the regional trail connections. I would have to look back. I don't know if Jean, if you know.
Yeah, I'm not sure exactly which page of the plan you're referring to, Tila, but I do know that we've had conversations with Boulder County and the work that they're doing to design and build a soft surface trail along RTD's rail corridor connecting Erie into town. And I think that might be what you're referencing. But if there are additional trails that aren't coming to mind right away, then we need to take a closer look.
Okay, I'm quite curious about, there's a proposed trail connecting sort of the end of the airport road and out kind of where Valmont takes a jog, and there's some multi-use paths that sort of die out there. I know that there's some long-term planning to make a more regional trail connection out there, and I don't see that on here. That's another one that's kind of maybe not on the map because you simplified the map, but maybe it's not on the map because we got cut in attachment C, which I haven't studied very well. So curious about that one. But I was looking at page 70, I think. Regional trail connections, yes, looking at a soft surface trail for Erie. So that is what you were referring to. And I saw soft surface mentioned somewhere else and I didn't know what page, but I was just curious about whether the soft surface in particular indicates a preference or something that we're pushing for, or maybe communication from Boulder County that that's the flavor of trail that they're willing to do. Or emphasizing, I know the bike route on Highway 119, the diagonal is going to be paved and so more suitable for the purposes of commuting. But I was just that just jumped out at me and I wanted to ask about it.
Yeah, those are good questions, Tila. If we're missing something, if we're missing one of the connections out of the airport, we'll be sure to take a closer look at that. And same regarding conversations with the county about a preference for soft surface. And we'll get back to you on that. Terrific,
thank you. Okay, Ryan, go ahead.
I'm just wondering about at the kind of overall principles of the plan, thinking about VMT and climate. So there's a lot of references, over 40 references to climate here. If I look for VMT or miles traveled, I don't think I find anything. And I'm just wondering if there's any kind of a decisions that pervade the whole plan regarding things we're doing to drive down VMT, whether from land use decisions or otherwise. Maybe this is a hard question, but I'm just curious. There's anything at the principal level, yeah.
Yeah, I think I understand what you're asking, and that I think it's a good point. I don't think that we have tied those directly in the write-up of the plan, but certainly in the pursuit of the land use changes and the mobility recommendations, reducing VMTs and managing trips in this area is, I think, guiding force behind some of the decisions that we're making.
Thanks. I would be very interested, I don't put you on the spot in the moment, but I'd be very interested to see those articulated as like the 3 or the 5 mechanisms, like, or the principles, or like, not just that we care about VMT, and I don't mean to imply that's what you're saying,
Yeah.
but not just that this is something we're thinking about, but this is the mechanism, or this is the thing we're doing that you will find as a principle. My guess is they're thought out, they're implicit, but they're not stated. I'd be very interested to see them as kind of like, this is our change model for how we're going to do the VMT to support the, the climate commitments, or, all the other things that might do.
That's great. That's, yeah, we can definitely, that's a good add. Thank you.
Thanks, Ryan. Any other questions? I think I have one other question, if you don't mind. In looking at the new definitions for land use, the two mixed use land use definitions, these are brand new flavors of things. Is that right? And then this is going to go into the Boulder Valley Comp Plan.
So the mixed use industrial designation is in the comp plan today, but it's pretty vague. And so we've really bolstered that to try and give more flavor to what those types of land uses in neighborhoods that have a mixed use industrial designation should include and look like. But the mixed use TOD is a brand new designation.
Okay. I think the only comment that I have, and I don't think we discussed this earlier, because I think it's been fleshed out a lot more since we last saw this, is it's saying a lot of the right things, mixing existing disparate uses into mixed use transit oriented. I would raise issue with it being a 15-minute neighborhood. I think that if it's a transit oriented development, we're talking about you being right there, and you should really be expecting to be there, I don't know, within 5 minutes or less than 10 minutes, I would say. And so I would call out the 15-minute as being something that we are aspiring to, citywide, that you have, 15-minute walkability to desired things. But in a TOD district, it should be much more convenient than 15 minutes. It should be really fairly instantaneous. I think that's my only, sorry, I said it was a question, but it's kind of a comment on that one.
No,
Sorry.
that's great. That's great.
Tab, do you have any comments and feedback now at this point? Go ahead, Alex.
Okay. Thanks, Kathleen and Jean. It's been a pleasure to watch this plan grow, and it's really important for a part of town with so much potential. I think a few pieces of feedback. First, kind of thinking the way Ryan was, I scanned this document for mentions of Vision Zero, and I couldn't find any. And we talk about the ease of moving people and goods through this area, but I think it's important that safety be first and foremost as we do that. I was glad to hear and see the protected bike lanes called out throughout this document, but I don't think that they were really rendered or depicted as all that strong based on the current best practices. So for example, on 55th Street, the rendering shows what I would consider more of like a cheap, low cost retrofit, showing more just paint and flex posts. I think it'd be fantastic if this was a little more inspirational for potential engineers who might view this in the future and show a curbed facility within the street, or even better yet, would be like a back of curb facility where the trees and the landscaping provide the buffer between the roadway and the protected bike facility. Similarly, the 55th and Arapahoe intersection shows a lot of colorful materials and back of curb, a lot of like mobility devices and to communicate the mobility hub, but the intersection still looks pretty terrifying from a ped or bike perspective. And so I think to show things like a protected intersection, treatments along the corners there would help communicate that it's not just about providing devices, but providing the safe infrastructure as well. Final thing is I think it's important to emphasize the need for transportation upgrades on Valmont. It's the north arterial for the East Boulder Subcommunity Plan. It'll of course also overlap with the Transit Village Area Plan Phase 2 work that's going to happen. So there's, I think, an opportunity for these to sort of work in tandem there. But that road is a fast arterial that's one of the few crossings of foothills, and then it provides important connections to Park Space, San Lazaro, and a lot of the trails out east. So ensuring that that's a corridor that we give some attention to and call out the need for protected bike lanes and all that, I think would be great.
Thanks, Alex. Hutch, Ryan, any feedback? Ryan, go ahead.
It's just it's the corollary of my question. I mean, I'll be frank. I'm surprised that we're still seeing proposals, let alone proposals this big, come to TAB that don't start with the discussion on the key TMP areas of mode shifting, VMT, Vision Zero, and say these are the things we're doing to take a stand on those, or these are the things we're doing to drive change in those. Those should be right up in the front. And I'm sure they're in the minds of folks, but I really want to see more articulation of here's the principle or the principles in each of those that we're gonna take a stand on. We're not just gonna sort of assume is gonna happen. But other than that, this looks like a lot of really great work. I look forward to seeing those inclusions.
I guess from my part, the thing that I honed in for comment is the BRT service along Arapahoe, because if that is a real BRT and we do get high ridership from and to various places, and it's I don't have in my head exactly what its catchment is as it goes east, but a really well designed BRT that flows a lot of people in and out of this area will make all the difference. And I know that there's already some good material in the plan there. It would be great to see in the plan some criteria for what a really good BRT station is, as opposed to the types of things that we've ended up with along 36. Those are just why they're very convenient for the buses, but not so convenient for the people. So I do think that there's some potential to have that be a real beefy center that's driven in significant part by the BRT access.
Thanks, Hutch. I was looking more at the stamp because that's really what we were focusing on last time we looked at this. We also talked about making 55th Street less of a barrier, particularly if we were going to flank, the new uses that would cross 55th Street. And in just looking at the general connections plan, I'm not seeing that it's any more permeable for users of all stripes, but in particular for more vulnerable road users. So I think that's still a hurdle we have to get over, and to try to not make 55th Street any more of a highway than it's behaving as right now. I think this is our chance to say we're planning to ameliorate some of that, and I don't see that that's happening. And then with the stamp, I'm looking at page 64 of the draft, and I'm seeing a mix of on-street bike lanes and multi-use paths, and including a couple of things that look like 1, 2, 3 blocks long on Western Avenue, say, or 1, 2 blocks of Conestoga, and they don't really connect. And so I'm kind of curious what the thinking is here between having multi-use paths versus a vertically separated facility, which is called out in a couple of these, versus a kind of shared street like what we tried at Boulder Junction, to varying degrees of success or not success. Because calling something out as a multi-use path that only goes 3 blocks isn't very useful. We've talked about these in the past. Do you have any feedback for me on why, in particular on the stamp, why there's like 4 different things going on in a very small area?
Yeah, that's a really good point, Keela. It might be helpful, Kathleen, if you could share that connections plan, the stamp connections.
Yes, I can. Share.
Right. Do we have the map that indicates the multi-use path extents?
Oh, yep. Let me pull up the actual
Bear with us.
plan.
Thank you. I just want to be able to speak directly to that.
I'm on page 63 and 64, I think, for the draft.
Thank you.
There we go. Yeah, so, one of the things that we've spent a lot of time working with our consultant team on since the 60% draft is fine tuning the dimensions of the streets and understanding how people are going to travel through here and to here. So for instance, you'll notice, when we say we only have a couple blocks of a multi-use path, and what we've done is we've tried to think about where people are traveling to. So for example, if they're trying to access the 55th and Arapahoe BRT station and they're coming from the Boulder Creek path, they would access it via, well, many different ways, but oftentimes along Commerce or through Ball Aerospace, which has a planned multi-use path connection, with the idea being that if you're coming from Ball Aerospace, you then have a few different options, east-west options. Oh, thanks for you moving your cursor there. To come south along range to hit the multi-use path on Arapahoe, or to continue along Conestoga Court, continue along Conestoga Court, south along Conestoga Street, and that would access the destinations to the south, as well as along Arapahoe to the multi-use path. Or if you're choosing to travel further north, say to the Flatiron Business Park, you might choose to travel along Western to access 55th Street. So the idea was to be able to provide options, but understanding that we wanted to work within the constraints of the existing dimensions of the roadways themselves, thinking that major public investments are likely to happen along our major arterials, right? Arapahoe and 55th. Whereas as redevelopment occurs, we would expect those improvements back of curb by development. And then we think about how the street itself is redesigned. So it was pretty important when we fine-tuned this to look at what space we had available to make these changes. And so that's where you see these recommendations for things like the multi-use paths, where along Conestoga, if you're heading east on Conestoga Court, for example, from Ball Aerospace, you're then on this activation street, which is a little bit more slow speed. It's a shared street. It's very activated. This is, your sort of main street type destination. So that was really the rationale behind how we determined these facilities in particular. Tila, does that answer your question? And I'm happy to.
Not quite. So let me restate it. I think you're getting there. I guess what I'm trying to say is, in that last example that you just said, you're coming from Ball, you're going along Conestoga, it's a more activated street. Why have we designated one block of it as having a multi-use path, and then it appears as kind of a shared street? What went into the choosing? I know you're talking about widths, and are you saying like there was enough room on that one block of Conestoga to put back of curb a multi-use path or multi-use facility of some kind, but then otherwise no, and we're going to go to a shared street? So there's no indication of shared streetiness here.
And I think some of the interpretation gets lost when we tried to pull out this piece of the connections plan that just really illustrates those separated facilities. I think when you go back and look at how this connects to that activation street, I think that speaks to it a little bit better. But yes, space constraints was very much a factor, as was the land use designation. So it changes, throughout the stamp. In some areas, we're looking at innovation TOD that's more employment based. In others, it's more residential based, and we see more activation at the ground floor level.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Do you have any reaction about having not really changed how 55th Street operates north of here? How it is kind of a barrier, and just looking at the general, the previous slide that Kathleen was showing us, the bigger area map, it's no easier for people to get around in these planned connections when they're coming from other parts of the city. Yeah, that map. We still have, yes, they're still getting diverted to these busy, uncomfortable arterials, Arapahoe and 55th Street, or all the way up to Valmont. And if I'm a cyclist going somewhere, it's pretty far out of my way. You have to divert to those uncomfortable paths. And one of the most uncomfortable ones is being on 55th Street and around 55th Street. Is there simply nothing we can do?
I wouldn't say there's nothing we can do. I think, one of the most important recommendations that's coming out of this plan is to prioritize design of 55th Street and look at those things like managing access and providing better crossing. So for example, Conestoga might be a good candidate for a protected crossing, whether that be a signal or some other means, as would Western further north. And that's where we have the opportunity to take a more fine-grained look at where we would like to see that permeability, because we had the opportunity to do the deeper dive in the Stamp area, whereas we haven't done as much north of the railroad. And I think that's the opportunity as we design 55th Street to consider how we make those crossings more safe and comfortable.
Okay. But if we adopt this connections plan that has left that area vague, when's the next time we're going to be expected to come back and rethink this?
And so I don't know if we would necessarily be proposing a new connection, a new roadway across 55th. If that's what you're suggesting, maybe I'm missing that, Tila.
I'm suggesting something for the more vulnerable users who don't want to divert all the way to Arapahoe or Belmont. So no, I'm not really actually talking a road.
Right, then I would say that the opportunity is when we really look at 55th Street in a more focused way than we have.
Okay. All right, that's mostly what I have. Tab, anyone else? I appreciate that this is many years long effort, and it's coming to a real conclusion here. So I do want to acknowledge the amount of effort, and particularly Jean, you've been driving this for a very long time. Appreciate that. It looks like we have no further comment or feedback for you at this time.
Okay, well, thank you so much for having us, and thanks for the feedback. And as I mentioned, our next step is we'll be sharing your comments back with Planning Board and Council, and we'll be using them to make updates. So thanks for all the thoughtful notes and comments, and it's great to see everybody.
Yeah, really great comments. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. We will move on now to matters. Jean is still here. Look at that, we're right on time. So we're moving to, I know, right? What's different this month? No. All right, so first up, the Dr. Cog tip improvements. We had a little preview last month, and now Jean is back to fill us in a little bit more.
Great, well, thank you so much. Jean Sanson, Principal Transportation Planner, and I am going to take a minute to share my screen, so bear with me. All right, can you guys see the title slide?
Yes.
Okay, wonderful. Yeah, so thanks for having me back this evening. We have been updating TAB over the last few months as we prepare to identify those projects that we would like to submit for the 2022 through 2027 Dr. Cog Sub-Regional Transportation Improvement Program, or TIP as we affectionately call it, applications. We've made some progress since our last update to TAB, and I want to share that with you this evening. So just as a reminder, as we identify projects that we think would be good candidates for grant funding, there are a couple things we take into consideration, both projects that are going to be competitive in the Dr. Cog field, as well as those projects, obviously, that advance our transportation master plan goals. And I thought it would be a good idea to just share the TIP criteria with you all, so you understand both the quantitative and qualitative data that we submit as part of these applications. So 30% of the criteria is related to the regional impact of the proposed project. So for example, do we provide benefits to multiple municipalities through implementation of this project? And then 50% is related to these 6 categories from the MetroVision Regional Transportation Plan that you see below: safety, active transportation, air quality, multimodal, freight, and regional transit. 10% is then associated with project leveraging, and 10% with project readiness. In other words, can this project be done within the time frame of the TIP, and what sort leveraging really relates to the type of match that you're prepared to make if you receive these federal funds. And I bring this up because I think that this criteria is very much in alignment with the type of criteria that we've used to compare the projects to each other, and you'll see more of that in a minute. But I think I have shown this slide to you before, but essentially the 15 candidate projects that we identified are all within the core arterial network, as well as the NAMS, the Northwest Area Mobility Study Network. So we think that, this longer list, I think were, those projects we identified that at least at an initial cut would be good candidate projects. And I'm going to pause for just a minute because I was remiss in acknowledging our council member, Nicole Spear, who's with us this evening. Tila, I know that you acknowledged her earlier, but what I want to say is that Nicole is the city's representative on the DRCOG board. So I just want to acknowledge her presence this evening and thank her for her service as they evaluate these projects. It's a big lift, let me tell you, for the board. So thank you, Nicole. Okay, so getting on with it, the candidate project evaluation. So what you see here is the application of the criteria to those 15 projects that you looked at on the map. And the projects that are highlighted in yellow are those that we are recommending to submit as TIP grant applications, either in the 2nd or the 4th sub-regional call for projects. So if you recall, the 2nd sub-regional call will happen in May and June of this year, and the 4th call will be at the end of the year in the December-January timeframe. So based on TAB feedback, we've made one refinement to the criteria that I want to point out. We've updated the VMT and GHG reduction criteria, acknowledging that both transit infrastructure and bicycle infrastructure have a role to play in reducing vehicle miles traveled. So you'll see that change. Since our last update to TAB, we've also had a chance to conduct a more rigorous safety and equity analysis of each project, as well as update project costs. And then also note at the bottom of this list that we've added a project along baseline, which I'll explain more as I walk through in a little more detail each of the projects that we're recommending to submit for TIP grants. So let me go ahead and do that. So the first project that we'd recommend for a TIP grant submittal is a preliminary design of the 30th Street corridor between Arapahoe and Iris, or Colorado 119. A couple things here. You might find it noteworthy that this corridor has the 2nd highest equity rating, meaning that it would serve a large population of low-income residents, populations of color, zero-car households, transit-dependent, and populations with disabilities. This corridor also, when compared to the other projects, has the 2nd highest number of fatal and serious injury crashes. So a huge potential to move towards our Vision Zero goals and mitigate the crashes that are happening along this corridor. I'm going to move on to the next project. So we made a few changes here. As you recall, we were looking at 2 different projects the last time we met. One was the intersection improvements at Broadway and Table Mesa, and the other was Broadway and Regent Transit priority intersections. We're fairly confident that CDOT will contribute funding to these projects from their 10-year plan. So with that, what we're proposing for a TIP submittal is to actually jumpstart and get the design work done, as well as include the feasibility and design of business access transit lanes to speed up travel for the large volumes of transit passengers that use Broadway. So with that, we've estimated that that would be approximately $480,000 to complete the design of that project. The next project that we would recommend for the second call is the US 36 or 28th Street West Side multi-use path between 4 Mile Canyon Creek Bridge, which you see here, and Broadway or US 36. So this is an important project for the city in that it completes the 28th Street multi-use path from the south end of the city all the way to the northern extent, providing a safe and comfortable separated path for bicyclists and pedestrians, and completing a gap in our citywide low-stress walk and bike network. And it's also worth mentioning here that this project, compared to the others, the other 14, had the highest number of fatal and serious bicycle and pedestrian injuries and crashes, with 2 fatalities and 17 serious injuries between 2015 and 2019. So again, a huge opportunity to mitigate those sorts of crashes with this project. Next project, and this is a new one, and many thanks to TAB members who have helped us to identify this project and add it to the list. So based on feedback we received, we're proposing to add the baseline enhanced transit stops and protected bike lanes between 30th Street and Foothills Parkway project. And you'll notice that we still have work to do in terms of scoring it against other projects, as well as determining what the cost would be. But it's our expectation that if we're successful, TIP funds could supplement the improvements that are being planned in conjunction with the pavement management project on baseline to create more permanent features such as floating bus stops along with protected bike lanes. So now moving on to call number 4. So these are longer range. This project, the West Colorado Avenue Multimodal Improvements Project between Regent and Folsom, will complete the western segment of the Colorado Corridor project with protected bike lanes, transit lanes, and a consolidated transit stop, similar to what you see at Broadway and Euclid today. And we have a high degree of confidence that CU will partner in this project. Next, in terms of projects that we would submit for the 4th call would be Colorado 7 or Arapahoe and 30th Street multimodal I want to say infrastructure intersection. I got it. So what's neat about this project is that using state funds, we're initiating preliminary design of this project this year, and that's going to give us an opportunity to evaluate all potential engineering solutions, keeping in mind that this is a state highway and we'll be coordinating closely with CDOT to both meet our local objectives as well as CDOT's standards. I'd also note that our TIP request may be substantially less with additional state funding, which we should have more information on later this year. And then lastly, the Colorado 7 or Arapahoe Bridge replacement over Boulder Creek, also located on the core arterial network and one of our highest priority NAMS corridors. This project will replace a structurally deficient bridge. So while this segment of Arapahoe does not have a large number of crashes, it does have the potential to result in serious injury and loss of life should the structure fail. So you'll notice that red circle when it comes to safety, because it's just a little bit of a different animal when we compare safety at this location as compared to crashes at other locations. An important aspect of this project is that CDOT will prioritize and fully fund the replacement of the north deck, allowing us to leverage these TIP dollars even further and build a single span bridge designed to meet the vision of the East Arapahoe Transportation Plan. So what's next? So based on the feedback that we received tonight, we will refine the initial evaluation and project definition in terms of the purpose of each project, the cost. You saw some updated costs this evening, as well as the schedule. We have prepared an update for council that they will be receiving as an informational briefing on March 15th. And what we are going to do is take that information and submit abstracts, 1-page abstracts on each project to the DRCOG Boulder County Subregional Forum Technical Committee. I know that's a mouthful, but that's basically the staff that works at the county level, and it's made up of all of our local jurisdictions within the county. And that staff will review each of the abstracts and give us feedback as to how competitive and likely they would think these projects would fare in the DRCOG TIP process. Then in April, we will take project feedback from that committee as well as community engagement. We'll probably be holding at least one virtual, I'm not sure if we're going to be in person yet, but at least a virtual engagement opportunity, as well as getting this information out on Be Heard Boulder. On May 9th, we'll come back to you looking for a recommendation, and then we'll take this information to City Council for their endorsement on May 17th. So that was a lot of information. I will pause for questions, comments, and feedback.
Thanks, Jean. Alex, I think you've seen these already. Is that right?
Yeah, Ryan and I got a preview of the list
Okay.
and had the opportunity to ask some questions, and we provided some preliminary feedback on some projects we liked more than others, and asked for the inclusion of the baseline project as well.
Good. Yeah, I saw you got a photo credit on the baseline slide. So I'm gonna let you lead on this one then. Do you have any further feedback, any thoughts? These are new to me.
Sure. I think it's important to note that we're trying to accomplish a lot of stuff by 2030, and we only have a handful of tip cycles remaining. And so it's important that we do a ton of impact with these limited options. And I think sometimes that means not necessarily getting the most money, but spending the money in the most cost-effective manners. And so I'd be somewhat reluctant to go after projects that exceed 2 million or so, with the fear that we could have one project that we might only win one $5 million project, for example, and it'd be better to try to win 3 to 4 in the $1 to $2 million range that are more longitudinal improvements, especially over just intersection improvements. And I think some that gave myself and Ryan some pause were the cost associated with the Arapahoe and 30th intersection. What we saw was originally $5 million or $6 million. I think it's been reduced to 5. And when we look at the design that was incorporated into the 30th and Colorado corridor study, we see a little bit of improvements for people bicycling with some back of curb. There's some bike improvements that help get people through that intersection. But it's an incredible distance for people to walk, which is very uncomfortable. It's unclear what the transit improvements are. It's on a future BRT corridor, but rebuilding the intersection as is, we weren't sure. It didn't seem to be dedicating transit only lanes or anything like that. But what it really did seem to be doing was preserving auto capacity. We've got double left turn lanes for all of the approaches, which are only needed in maybe the PM peak. And the reason why this intersection was so expensive, as we understood it, was the need to acquire right of way for those bicycle improvements. And so it seems like we could save some cost here by reducing the right of way need by going from 2 left turn lanes at every approach down to 1. Because I think it'd be incredibly ironic if we used up an entire tip cycle on something like this and then it blocked our ability to build protected bike lanes north of here. The $6 million protected intersection wouldn't do a cyclist a whole lot of good if it doesn't connect to anything on the other end of it. I think I've got a little bit of a philosophical disagreement with staff on the BMT and greenhouse gas reductions that could take place on 30th Street. I think there are so many thousands of people who live in close proximity to such a rich area when it comes to destinations. It's got grocery stores up and down it, tons of retail in the middle, and then connections to Goose Creek, Boulder Creek for peds and bikes, and then baseline Arapahoe and the diagonal are all east-west regional transit corridors that intersect this. So to me, providing people with a safe place to walk and bike along here with such a richness of destinations nearby seems like a massive opportunity to create a livable street and reduce GHG and BMT. Ryan, what am I missing?
Well, I made Jean your life difficult by sending you my own comments and then getting together with Alex and then joining on with some additional ones. But I mean, my main thought on this is sort of common to both, and it's and it's summarizing the first bullet point on which that Alex sent, and it says aim to create the most impact and really be focused on what impact means. And I think, Gene, we had such a good discussion about, okay, so with the rubric that staff has used to initially start to prioritize the number of 15, whatever the number is, there, thoughtful analysis has gone into the columns and but then if you dig under, okay, but the column that's for VMT, what is underneath that? And I think you and your team did a great job of using what you had, just sort of like within the team. But it just feels to me like generally, as Alex said, like he has some informed ideas about where we're going to get VMT reduction. I don't know that we have a unified idea about what is the change model for VMT reduction. And this isn't specific to this proposal. I think it's just back to the previous item, the comment I made, that question of like, how does this fit into the TMP goal of mode shifting and VMT reduction? So I think, it's a separate exercise. I mean, it's a bigger exercise. Maybe it's not bigger, but it's got its own arc of work that's needed for that. My hope would be that we could at least get that started here and say, like, what do we really believe is going to cause GHG and in particular GHG reduction through VMT decreases, and in particular, how much of this are we expecting to come from regional intercity transit versus doing the work to improve our streets locally? And there's a lot of professional judgment needed, in addition to data, to do this right. But I would just love to see a little more kind of logic in this, and then be able to say, and therefore this is how we're going to support the TMP goal. So sorry, it's like a super big idea. But other than that, I think Alex, if you go through the comments point by point, I mean, there's a lot of great, I think, detail ideas on some of the different projects that come from Alex's expertise that I can't take any credit for. So anyway, I'd leave it at that.
Okay. Hutch, do you have any response, any feedback, it occurred to me at the end of Ryan's comment saying, Alex had a whole bunch of point by point deals. And I'm like, oh, well, where's our big picture guy thing here?
Yeah. And interestingly, my one, I had two thoughts, one of which Alex already said, which was around when we're looking at an intersection improvement, particularly one that starts eating up significant budget, let's make sure it's actually connected to something, so we're not improving it for nothing. So Alex's point about 30th Street and the 30th and Arapahoe intersection being perhaps the primary example, and the other thing was I wasn't clear around the bridge thing and whether we'd really want to use TIP for the bridges versus these other things. I know there's massive infrastructure bills going through that are aiming at things like bridges. I don't know what mechanisms are in place yet. You guys know more about that than me, but I would not want to prioritize things that are purely vehicle bridges right now, in the hopes that monies to fix those sorts of things are working their way through separately.
So Jean, can you respond to that last point about the Arapahoe Bridge replacement in particular, if it's just cars? I mean, I see that you've filled in the bubble that says includes transit priority and bicycle infrastructure, but it's basically fixing what's deficient there now and putting back stuff in place that's already there. Is that about right?
Well, actually, when it's rebuilt, it will be rebuilt to the East Arapahoe cross section. So that would include the raised protected bike lanes, bat lanes, etc. So that's the work that's going to be happening this year as we do preliminary engineering along the corridor. So it's certainly not the intent to build back what's there now. And from what I know about additional funds being available for these types of projects, Dr. Cog is programming the federal infrastructure dollars that we know are available now. So those are factored into these increased funding levels that we're seeing in the TIP program between 2022 and 2027.
That's a question about that bridge. Would it include a protected bike lane and a multi-use path over the creek?
So that's if you go back to the vision concept for the East Arapahoe Transportation Plan, that is the intent, but we need to do the preliminary engineering work to understand, what those actual dimensions would look like.
Would it be possible to just do a multi-use path if we were to move forward with building these? This is like North Broadway, where we needed to close a $2 million gap, and if we just narrowed the path for people walking and biking in an area where they're not getting in and out of cars or accessing driveways or stopping to access anything, we perhaps could just move people a little quicker on something narrower.
Yes, that's a really great point. And, those are exactly the type of conversations we want to have as we begin the preliminary engineering project.
Okay.
Yeah,
I worry
just
that this is.
Go ahead, Alex.
I worry that this bridge in particular, it's really, it's worn down because of it's moved so many cars for so many years. I saw the North Bridge has been there since 1938. And from a ped bike perspective, it feels like fairly a redundant facility with the confluence of the Boulder Creek path and the pass through East Boulder there. And so our ped bike network to me feels fairly complete here. And this is really just replacing a potentially deficient auto facility.
That's what it felt like to me too, which is why I kind of wanted to dive into that one a little bit more.
Tila, I pulled up the notes that Ryan and I sent to staff. Would it be helpful for me to maybe highlight a few more things that we included in that?
Sure.
And then Ryan, please hop in if you can. So 30th Street, we see a lot of value, just like I mentioned earlier, in the greenhouse gas and DMT reduction. The 30th in Arapahoe, again, it felt like it was the cost burden there was the preservation of PM left turning capacity, which seemed like a way to undermine the protected bike lanes on 30th. And if the BRT on State Highway 7 is effective, then perhaps we won't need the double left turn lanes onto the BRT corridor as well. The Broadway bus lanes, I think there's a neat opportunity for a northbound lane at Regent that I think would cost somewhere in the neighborhood of $1 billion. We were asking why the Table Mesa and Broadway project was so expensive, and it wasn't super clear why it would be $1.5 million. So I think before elevating that too much, exhausting any potential low cost design alternatives would be great. And then we had the question of what about just using pavement markings and signage establishing the lanes between Baseline and Table Mesa as bus and right turn only, just to do what's cheap first and claim that space. And then in the event that we need some support from others, commencing a corridor study with that outcome in mind as soon as possible, to hear from stakeholders like CDOT what they might need to see in the way of vehicle modeling or benefit from the transit rider perspective. But I like how those were sort of lumped together as on the same slide for this project. And then, yeah, the Arapahoe Bridge, like we said, it felt like it was expensive on a per length basis, while we're still at a point in time where we have the opportunity to do some lower cost things, and getting to the point of trying to do the most good. It's true that the tip site opportunity presents up to 80% cost savings, where we are using our 20% local match to get to 80. But I think with political will and in the right environment, City Council can give us a 90% discount on a 4-to-3 conversion on a street like Iris. And perhaps that's where we can do the most good with the money we have. Might not be chasing these really expensive projects that are in name ped bike and transit, but on these state highways where that's sort of your last choice. If you're a human out on foot or on your bike, you might want to see investments on other corridors. And then the US 36 multi-use path felt effective on a cost per length basis, and we weren't aware at the time that there were some crashes there. I'm curious what type of crashes they were though. Was it people traveling along it, or was it at these intersections, or people crossing the corridor where the problem is really the high speed of vehicles at intersections, or is it cars veering out of the road, and that's the problem that the multi-use path would actually solve.
This is the
'cause
4 Mile
otherwise-
Creek Bridge path.
What was that?
This is the 4 Mile Canyon to Broadway path.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That felt like there wasn't much there on the corridor itself on the north or east side of the street. There aren't a whole lot of destinations. And then to the west, the neighborhoods didn't feel very permeable. There weren't many points to actually access the path. And we thought that to provide the most walking and biking connectivity for the people who live up there, that focusing on streets that were more internal to the neighborhood, like Collectors and Arterials internal to the neighborhood, would be the better way to connect people to destinations with the hope of reducing BMT.
Huh, okay. Well, but that's been the thinking for a long time, and now we're finally sounding the alarm that says let's pay attention and improve stuff on arterials, and here's one that does it. The
It
price
seems like an
tag
undesirable
is
place.
for sure. So in terms of is this worth the cost? That's the one that kind of raises flags for me, and so I'm really quite interested to hear your thoughts on that one. And of course, the number of fatal and serious injury crashes is something that always piques my interest and prioritizes things for me. But it seems pretty darn expensive for to sort of extend a facility that's not heavily used right now. That being said, if we don't build this stuff, they won't come. So I think this multi-use path extension for me is probably the most questionable one, I think. Like I would be disappointed if we submitted all of these and what we got funded was the multi-use path and the Arapahoe Bridge. A replacement. That would feel to me like not a successful casting of the net. Anyone else?
I think Erica has her hand up. Chair, I guess she started to do your job, but I have something to add on to Alex, but she was first.
Okay. Hi, Erica. I have to scroll through the view because of the
Sorry.
That's okay.
If tab members could, please proceed and so forth, and then I'll just make some points at the end.
Okay, Ryan.
So for the other non-engineers out there, two things that I think are that I found interesting to decide with Alex, two generalizable, more or less generalizable principles. So one on 30th and Arapahoe, the reason for eliminating the double left turn lane, multiple reasons, but one of those is because the distance to cross the road as a pedestrian is a lot wider with the double turn lane. So there's a direct conflict with reducing the or increasing accessibility and safety for pedestrians every time we have a wider road like this. So, it's not just because, to reduce the double turn lane, there's a real cost in Vision Zero and mode shift and BMT to keep a double turn lane. So I understand there's a reason why those have been added, but I just, it's a cost. The other one is just in terms of generalizable principles, the Regent, there's an example of an intersection at Regent, where is it? Regent Broadway, and it's using a protected bus lane at the intersection with the idea of signal timing to give the bus priority to scoot out ahead of traffic, which number one gives the bus priority. But number two, it gives us a chance to hold traffic where it's going to be congested outside of the city core or outside of areas where we're really trying to have more bike and ped traffic. And we talked quite a bit about this, and it's a tool that we can use as a city to if it's going to be car congestion, to keep it out of the core, out of what we're trying to have more vulnerable users. So I would just be very interested to see a strategic use of that. This seems like maybe that's a good intersection for it, but also elsewhere.
Okay.
So my thoughts.
Thank you. Anyone else? Okay, Erica, what would you like to say?
Just thank you for the opportunity to speak. I think I just wanted to be able to say two things. One is that to recognize and say that I really truly appreciate and support, the perspective of trying to shift modality away from the automobile toward pedestrian and bicycling and transit modes of travel. And, it's one of the things that I personally have strive for and have supported throughout my professional career. But that having been said, I'd also like to recognize that, at least as far as the bridge is concerned, I understand, a perspective of not wanting to further accommodate vehicle travel and so forth. But if the condition of the bridge is such that it seriously does need to be replaced as opposed to anything else because of safety conditions, I would advocate that at least I have a fiduciary responsibility to the city to avoid not only loss of property but loss of life. And I think that is one perspective too that needs to be in the mix of things, because we've seen bridges collapse elsewhere in the United States with varying degrees of impact and implication. So I just wanted to flag that. And it's not an argument either for or against certain modalities. It's just an argument for safety. That's really one of the core TMP principles. I guess then the other thing that I wanted to note is we're taking in and receiving all the feedback that you've offered and so forth. At the end of the day, we really want to bring those elements forward and to begin to make that shift in terms of modality so that we're less car dependent within the community. But just recognize we also have to be competitive with our colleagues and other cities and elsewhere in the region to be able to receive funds. And in our current TMP, at least, we have a multimodal transportation master plan that has a lot of things in it. Many of them are very costly. And so it's just something to keep in mind. Again, it's not an argument either for or against certain modalities, but it's just just a flag. So that's all I would offer in terms of discussions.
Thank you. Yeah, no, I recognize that the sub-regional committee hasn't given feedback yet to staff on these, and that kind of assessment is going to be an important part of which of these you proceed with or how urgently we proceed. I would just want to say, Erica, to your first point about having a duty to preserve the system, more or less. This is a conversation we've had with previous directors as well. Is a recognition that the previous system, as Jean spoke to earlier, just straight up, it was slanted toward motor vehicles and private motor vehicles, and to some extent we're trying to preserve that balance. And so I think her clarification that the bridge would have in mind that the bridge replacement would try to meet the cross section with the multi-use path and a protected bike lane, given assessment of the capacity there, is helpful. But it comes with a guarantee that it would put all 4 of these motor vehicle lanes still back. And so it kind of preserves some of that imbalance that we're trying to correct. And secondly, Jean had said it's deficient now, but I haven't heard anywhere that it's gonna, where in the useful life it is. So we just went through replacing a difficult to use and ADA non-compliant overpass over the Foothills Parkway to have a beautiful underpass, but it was a $6 million project-ish. And it didn't feel like a good use of our money. It felt like spending a whole lot of money to avoid the elephant in the room, which is it's not a safe place for bicycles and people to cross because it's a 6-lane highway there of high-speed traffic. And I think that's the same question that Alex and I have about the multi-use path, 4 Mile Canyon Creek to Broadway project. Is this a very expensive way of making something very pretty, but is there a less expensive way that might actually achieve our goals better of making these vulnerable users more connected, more visible, and sort of claim a space on our roadways and on our arterials that they don't have the opportunity to do now. Is the bridge deficient? Is it, I mean, does deficient mean it's at year 45 of a 40-year design life? Is for the overpass that we replaced, it had, I think, a 60-year life, and it was at 50 years, or maybe it was a 50-year design life, and we were at 40 years.
Yeah, I don't have the specifics on it. I don't know if Garrett does, but I can tell you that CDOT would not be putting any money to it if it wasn't top of the list for replacement.
Yeah. Understood. Thank you. Okay, any other feedback? Oh, Alex, hi, you have your hand up.
Yeah, I think with the, I mean, no one wants a bridge to fall, I'll say that. But it'd be helpful to hear why projects like that and 30th and Arapahoe are expected to reduce BMT and GHG the way that the table implies. And then it would also be beneficial, I think, for me to understand when we do our CIP, we go project by project or program by program and show the cost breakdown by mode of travel. And on these, to me, they feel like 90+% auto capacity preservation. And if the reality is we need to replace the bridge, I think it's worth noting that we're replacing a bridge that moves a ton of cars, and it's in the status that it's in because it's moved a ton of cars for the last 80 years. And what we're putting back will continue to move a bunch of cars for the next 50. And it's just important to note that when we look at our overall spending, that we might not be investing with our top priorities. It might just be the preservation of the things that haven't been working.
Okay. Garrett came on camera. Do you have information for us, Garrett, or you're just here?
Yeah, sorry, I've got a delay on my computer here.
Okay.
I just wanted to note that the bridge is over 80 years old,
Okay.
the westbound bridge, and the sufficiency rating is in the 30s. Bridge sufficiency ratings are an indicator of the health of a bridge and are rated between a scale of 0 to 100. And typically when they fall below a 50 rating, they get on CDOT's radar, and they don't typically start looking at putting money in it. And replacement of structures such as this until it gets into the 30s and 40s. So as Jean noted, it's definitely on their radar because of where it's falling on the sufficiency rating and its age.
Okay, thank you. That's helpful.
There are two structures, correct? It looks like the northern one is the original and the southern one might be newer. Are both structures at the same sufficiency rating?
No, the eastbound lanes, the southern structure is in much better condition.
And it looks like the roadway is like 38 feet from curb to curb. Would there be an opportunity to preserve that structure and in the interim expand the 5-foot sidewalk, whatever it is, to maybe a 10-foot sidewalk and slide the guardrail over a little bit so that we don't have to reconstruct it, but we can still provide a 10-foot facility?
Yes, and again, this is a CDOT structure, so we would be have to defer to the state bridge engineer's office. But one possibility is that the westbound lane structure would be fully reconstructed, and if it's deemed that the southern eastbound lane structure is in a decent condition, that it could be reinforced and upgraded and not removed, and added onto and connected to the westbound lane structure.
Okay, kind of like the Table Mesa situation, it'd be great to explore all the potential cost saving options and the reduction in left turn lanes at 30th and Arapahoe before we make massive commitments that really eat up our multimodal improvement budget on things that are inherently somewhat a preservation of the status quo.
Thank you. All right, I think we've exhausted this.
I guess I have one question for staff.
Okay.
I spoke with some folks at CU last week, and they were talking about a roundabout at Folsom in Colorado. Is that something that you guys have been in coordination on? I know it's overlaps with a pavement management program project for us and a potential TIP project.
I can speak to that. Not sure if Jean, you've got other information, but yes, we're aware of their desire for a roundabout at that intersection. It's not something that we are looking at incorporating with our TIP application, but we're aware that that's something that is a long-term goal and objective for them.
Okay, and then it felt like since we're talking about baseline, that the 35th Street intersection is something that warrants a little coordination, where CU has looked at the need for a signal there to get buses out of their parking lot where the new dorms are. And that's something that we're about to potentially seek some grant money on. And talking to the city and university staff, it seems like there's a need for coordination on that one.
Okay, now we're gonna leave it there. Thank you. Jean, Garrett, thank you.
Yeah, thank you. This input's been really helpful. Appreciate it.
Cool. Thanks very much. And there is everybody. Okay, any other matters from staff? Okay, we're moving on to matters from the board. We got an email, the TAB retreat date is, am I frozen? I'm frozen on one of these. The TAB retreat date is April 25th. I'm not clear whether it's from 5 to 10 or 6 to 10. But in any event, hold that evening open. All of you who will be on TAB. 6 to 10, okay, there you go. That's better. Anything else? I'm not really sure what's we're gonna be virtual. But other than that, we haven't really determined what the shape of what the retreat's gonna look like. And I think we'll just look to help from city staff on figuring that out. And quite possibly the next chair is gonna be able to figure that out better.
Okay. Tila, sorry,
Yeah.
can I ask about that?
Please.
Yeah, I'm very interested in what the agenda is and just being strategic about it. And it's, being driven by what TAB needs to do.
Right.
What we want to do. In my mind, something we would sure benefit from. I talk a lot, and I'll probably talk more tonight about how I'd like to see a greater strategic logic in a lot of the things we talk about. And I say that to staff, but I also think that as TAB, in one sense, we would do staff a favor if we were to say, here are the 5 things that we are gonna, continue and go back to and really care the most about going ahead. Just my opinion.
Yep.
But I think that this could be a time for that. And I'm not sure about, I would prefer to look to TAB to figure out what do we want to do and then give staff a chance. I don't join as many agenda setting meetings, so I might be speaking out of turn a little bit, but this seems to me like a really potentially important meeting that I'd love for us to, I guess just be really thinking about how it's going to feed into the year ahead.
Yeah. So to answer, well, yes, traditionally that has been a time for TAB to set its own priorities. When that has happened in the past, and it's been solely led by TAB members, it tends to bear zero resemblance to anything that's on staff's radar or ability to tackle within a year. And so I think to make TAB's work useful, there has to at least be some reference to what the staff work plan is, and some idea of what is a rational kind of set of goals. I think the way that you stated is sort of our priorities, and I think that's great. And I that's going to be a very useful bit of discussion. There was also in the last year from city staff and from the city manager's office, a desire to sort of make certain elements of every board retreat cover things like, here's what the scope of the board is, and talk about, the emerging thinking on diversity and inclusion, and check in with the city attorney's office. And so there were certain things that had been kind of, from my perspective, couched as much must touch on subjects, and they ended up taking up much more of the TAB retreat last year than I would have wanted. So thank you for that input. I am absolutely welcome rethinking it and having more involvement by all members on what the retreat agenda should look like. Erica.
So I guess the thing I'd like to say is that it would be really nice if we were able to both go into and come out of the if you were able to go in and come out of the retreat with a level of alignment. There should be at least 2 items on the agenda. And so as Teal had mentioned, diversity and inclusion. And so there's some trainings that I'm going to be going to in the next couple of weeks that will give more structure around that as a board liaison. But then the second thing obviously is CAN. And I think that's a place and space where there's a high level of desire, there's direction by council, and I think we're in a place and space together. And in terms of other wants, needs, and desires that TAB may have, it's also going to be, a discussion about where there's bandwidth and capacity to be able to accommodate those things. And so just as much as we've done with at the council retreat, when council had a whole slew of things that they wanted to have looked at, there was also the recognition that there were trade-offs and that there, and I say we, it's all of us, we can't get everything done all at once within that same year. So I think that's an important element also to consider in the midst of all this about our collective capacity.
Okay. Thank you. And then once our, to circle a little bit back on that, once our new members are seated, I think it would make a lot of sense for me and Alex as the current chair and vice chair to reach out to them individually and sort of gather their thoughts and priorities before the next meeting happens, just in terms of trying to help shape to make the retreat useful. I know typically new members kind of take a backseat because they're new to everything. But with 2 new people, we're going to have to kind of get them on a faster conveyor belt, I think. So, and I have to think about how we can do that and, not violate open meetings rules and things like that. But that's sort of my thinking. I was planning to reach out to them and to Alex to figure out some more nitty-gritty retreat planning. But by all means, Ryan, if you have other thoughts, I don't mean to shut you out of it at all. But we're gonna have to be thinking about this, and just because of open meetings, we have to kind of talk about it more in this kind of form. And there's only 3 of us at the moment for that.
That's fine. You got my 2 cents. Maybe one just clarification though. Maybe what I'm asking for doesn't have to happen at the retreat. And maybe, I think last year we had to go through a bunch of compliance stuff, and the meeting, was, frankly, was just kind of atomized with a lot of little things. And if we have to go through those lot of little things, fine. But I don't think that means we should, pass up the chance to have a strategic plan and have as part of that strategic plan, if we don't have the resources for things, to add up what the cost is, so city council can see that and make a values decision about what do we do about it. Right. Anyway, I'm going into the substance. So anyway, you heard me. Thanks.
Terrific. Thank you so much. Okay. Other open board comments? Anyone have stuff they want to raise? Alex.
I'd just like to note that Boulder B-Cycle, which has been a great community partner for the last 11 years, hit their 1 millionth trip in their system in recent weeks, which is exciting to see. And I caught up with Kevin Krause, their executive director, last week, and he said that with how successful the devices on campus have been, that they think that they're going to see drastic growth in the network, in their system rather. It sounds like the ridership almost doubled last year with the introduction of the electric devices, and they think that the path to 2 million might only take 3 or 4 years. So that something that was on life support for several years, they seem to figure out that getting a bike pass in the hand of every student and electrifying the fleet and trying to have a station within a 5-minute walk of everyone on campus is really working. And it was also assuring to hear that now they're starting to look at how they can expand to not just stations on campus, but places that students want to go. And it's cool to see how much overlap there is with that in the core arterial network, where 30th Street and Baseline are corridors that students need to travel along. And so there's an opportunity to coordinate both the expansion of the multi-mobility or the shared mobility device network with the protected bike lane network. And hopefully we can help them out as well in that regard.
Great. And because we have this handy dandy list at the bottom now of future agenda topics, we're going to be talking more about the micromobility program and pilot in May, it looks like. So that's great. Anybody else for open comment?
Jim, anything from you?
Yeah.
I was going to go first,
you know, I've done my sort of last words thing. So I guess in terms of this going forward process, I haven't felt it sort of my role to chip in.
I'll chip in. I got okay. So two things. I just wanted to elevate, or I guess kind of raise the profile of input from the community. And now that we have Granny and Rebecca, I'm not sure if I'm allowed to acknowledge them, but in any case, just for the group benefit. So sorry, I gotta find my notes here. Oops, I lost my notes. So Mark, we talked about Mark before he left in the snow and ice discussion, and you know, soon I understand we have a commitment from staff to talk about updating snow and ice removal or maintenance. But I wanted to talk about a different aspect of this, and it's Mark and I had been putting our heads together, and it prompted some meetings with community members representing disability community. And in particular, I mentioned, or I met with the lead contact for the Center for People with Disabilities called Craig Towler. He's a community organizer, and I sent an email around to staff, to Tab, and I think some staff members have probably seen it. And I just wanted to summarize it here and suggest some maybe ways forward. I don't want to discuss all the policy. I'm probably not the best person to do so, but just to say for now that Craig is eager to talk about snow and ice maintenance, specifically on behalf of the disability community. And he has some specific recommendations, but he also broadened his input to cover recommendations for all 4 seasons. And I've been on Tab now a year, and I can't remember us including this community specifically, at least in discussions. I'm not saying it's it's completely neglected. In fact, he said in fact that CPWD has had engagement with staff, and he was also clear to say that while maybe they're a prominent organization, they're not the only representative for the stakeholder group. But the main idea is he was eager to be involved with future discussion. I thought future discussion on this topic or with this community group would be very helpful towards our goals of mode shifting. And just wanted to kind of raise this and make sure that this had folks' attention at least now. And if there's not an immediate next step on it, that's fine. But I'm happy to facilitate any of this if I can. Maybe I'll just pause there. I don't feel you have anything, but if not, I can keep going.
You can keep going. I just wanted to note that Craig has been involved with, so he was a very pivotal member of the pedestrian PAC advisory committee. Yeah. There you go. And so there was, I think it was a February snowstorm where they met at the library and rented wheelchairs so that people who were not wheelchair bound could have a chance. And it was brought indoors, I think, because there was a snowstorm. Liv isn't on right now. I just checked, but she can probably, I wasn't at the event, but she can probably, or I couldn't make that meeting, but she can probably fill you in on what happened. But the irony, was that people were going to figure out how difficult it was to get around in a wheelchair, and then they couldn't, and were told to go inside and practice inside. And that's the whole problem here. So it's a tough nut to crack, but it's not one that we're unaware of. Go ahead.
Okay, so maybe just to conclude, so there, there is a policy agenda they have, and as I said, I haven't heard any discussion of it, at least in my years with the tab. So I have no doubt that it might be on people's minds, but to the extent that we get involved in any more planning, strategy development, change model, I think this would be an important point of input to at least consider.
Yes, thank you.
Okay, the second thing also, this came in today, I just wanted to acknowledge an email to Tab from resident, I think Mara Dudley is how to say her name, you could correct me. And it was on the signal at Broadway and Iris. And her question was, would the city ever consider making the crossing default to pedestrians instead of the cars? And she discussed how she stands there, and gets fumes and it takes a long time. It's 5 lanes of traffic. And I also have spent more time than I'd like at that intersection waiting to cross. And I guess it made me think 2 things. One, I would love for staff just to really give that consideration. It intuitively makes sense to me. But secondly, my intuition is not what should dictate any of this. And so therefore, it makes me think, what are the menus of options that we have at these types of intersections? And then what are the decision factors, or what are the things we do to make the decision on what happens? I don't expect anything on the spot right now, but it just struck me as one of those things where I think it seems like a little bit of a mystery to community members and frankly policymakers with the city outside of the core, the very core team doing the installations or the programming. And it doesn't seem like it should be a mystery. I mean, maybe I'm wrong. Maybe there's a reason it ought to be a mystery, but it strikes me that there ought to be a set of decision criteria, even if some of the criteria are objective and values based, that this should be transparent. So anyway, just a thought, if there's a chance to pick up on this in the coming months, year ahead, I think it would make for an interesting discussion, and maybe the kind of thing that Tab or staff would benefit from Tab even weighing in on. That's all I got.
Thank you. Thanks. Erica's put her hand up. Do you want to respond first, Erica?
Yeah, just to let everyone know that we have been working on an ADA transition plan. And so whenever Jenny was here, she was working on that, but Nathan Pope is finishing that up. And we work very closely with, Craig and the team on the different projects. In fact, folks in the department just met with him last week. So I just wanted to make sure that Tab knew, and the listening community also knew, that we are working on these issues. It just hasn't been, I guess, fully daylighted yet and so forth in terms of a draft, but that'll also be something that comes forward to Tab. And, with regard to, the other issues about essentially having what are called warrants to be able to make changes to, our traffic signals and also, crossings and so forth. I've referred that email for response by Devin Jocelyn, who's our principal traffic engineer. And so we'll be getting more information on that. So I just want to make sure that you were aware of that.
Thank you. And it looks like Allison has put a link to the ADA self-evaluation and transition plan in the chat. If you wanted to copy that and check it out, Ryan, that's where to find it. Thanks, Allison. And just to follow up on Ryan's question about the push buttons and when can it be automated, the warrants and all. So related questions like this from Tab members and from Community Cycles several years ago led to at least a draft. I think it's still in draft form, but an attempt by City of Boulder to get all of the stuff that was kind of in the one person's head who was in charge of managing the signals and signal operations onto paper. He has since retired, and so we're glad we did that kind of download, but there hasn't been a whole lot of progress or refinement made. It was basically an attempt to get down what the current practices were, and not a whole lot of why, and not a whole lot of, from my recollection, it's been several years since I've looked at it, but not a whole lot of discussion of what that set point is, when we decide it is warranted or is not. And that is something that I and other Tab members have had some back and forth with previous directors, urging them to, have that be more sort of more pedestrian anticipating and friendlier to pedestrians. And it's something that it's an iterative process, but we have a new director now. And now maybe we have someone who wants to pick up that draft policies and look at it and think about it. And but at least we have the first step, which is something of a state of the union, sort of here's where we're at today, as of about 4 years ago. So if I can find that, I'll hand it off to you, Ryan, so you'll have an idea of where we left it last time we talked about it in depth. Okay. Yep. The one other thing I wanted to raise tonight under open board comment is something that Mark emailed us about late February, noting that, just days after our last tab meeting, there were two fairly meaty transportation related items that went to planning board and were presented to council, and we hadn't heard anything about them. One was the transit village area plan, and one was the fire station planning, which included a cross section of 30th Street and Bluff Street. And knowing us, we probably would have had something to say had we been alerted and consulted on this. And so I think his main question was why weren't we consulted, and what goes into the decision of when something goes before tab for at least input and when it doesn't.
Would you like me to respond?
Yes.
So I feel like this is an odd case of me being the director of transportation and mobility, yet I'm trying to play a planning director on TV. But what I do know is that Nuria and Chris Meschuk have been having conversations with the planning folks, as well as myself, and then some others to try and map out some pathways. And so the ask at council before was to, look at concept plans and so forth. And certainly in the case of the fire station 3, that concept plan had come before council and they'd chosen not to call it up. But that was prior, significantly prior to the most recent, discussions about, staff in the planning and development services department, bringing things forward with an explicit ask of council of question whether or not they wanted to call up developments. With regard to, other things and so forth, I think that there's, sort of a balance in things, and that my understanding is the planning board has a quasi judicial role and TAB has an advisory role. And I think from a legal standpoint, people are trying to look through how that maps together with all those things. And quite honestly, I don't have all the details and specifics here in front of me, but that's what I know at this juncture.
Well, thank you. Not sure that cleared anything up for me, really, but and it kind of follows on my complaint from last time that a discussion and presentation for continuing the open streets, in-street dining stuff came and went to council without tab input. There are times when at least I think it could be flagged for our attention, even if there's no staff input, and maybe that's incumbent on us as members of the community anyway, to just be more aware of what's coming before council from various other boards. But I did think that at least the fire station and the cross section of 30th Street and Bluff Street, that was so obviously transportation related that I felt we were remiss in not having known about it. It was alerted, we were alerted by a member of the community. And so I at least had a chance to talk to David Ensign before that meeting. But at that point, I could not consult with any of my other tab members about it in case it did come back. So our hands are a little tied that way as well. You're muted, Erica.
So I think it's important to note that in the development review environment, it's a different beast than in sort of a because there are, are legalistic things that one needs to deal with. And I don't feel like I'm the appropriate spokesperson on behalf of the city because I don't know all the intricacies and so forth and legalities here within Boulder and certainly within the state of Colorado. But I do know that as a consultative, so within the development review process, the planning department has a consultative role as opposed to an advisory, a specific advisory or review role. And that we're brought in and asked by our colleagues in planning and development services whenever to weigh in on things. But that's how the system works. And so I think that what you're asking for is that to have more engagement and involvement with that part of the transportation mosaic of things that are out there. And I believe that part, and from a process standpoint, has been trying to be able to identify where those touch points are, and certainly within the concept plan process. But then just as is tonight, whenever you review the East Area, the East Area community subcommunity plan, that trying to get more touch points in earlier as opposed to later in the process.
Yep.
And so I think that, is it perfect yet? No, but we're trying to make things different, better.
Yep. Okay, I think we're on the same page, Erica. And I'm not asking for TAB to be inserted in any kind of quasi-judicial or determination. I suppose I was thinking of the same thing that you just raised just now, was when we were consulted on the stamp on the East Arapahoe connections plan, that when we had our first joint meeting with planning board, it was so striking to me how members of planning board and members of transportation board viewed the exact same map in really different ways. And so what concerns me is when something very streety, like the cross section of 30th Street, goes before planning board. I want to make sure that whatever decision that they make is as informed as possible. And I felt that they probably had not, and I think this was borne out by my conversation with David Ensign, they had not had as much practice in thinking about this stuff and had not really paused to think about it in the way that someone who is more transportation oriented would. And so to the extent that we could make a more informed and better decision by planning board or by council by being asked to weigh in on these kinds of things, it will be better. And if we can't do it as full TAB for various reasons, then I would hope that we could just be, as I say, alerted and informed that this is going on. And as particularly transportation minded people who have demonstrated and been more involved than the average member of the community on such things, that we might want to focus on it and weigh in on it, if not as full TAB, at least in our individual capacities, as opposed to reading about it in the paper 2 days later.
I want to acknowledge that I've heard you.
Thank you. I acknowledge you've acknowledged that you've heard me. Anyone else? Open board comment. Hutch isn't going to read us a dirty limerick on the way out or anything?
Nope.
No, not your style. I see no other hands for open board comment. I do see the future agenda topics pulled out. One thing we talked about at our last agenda setting meeting, Erica, was whether we were going to get an update from the Boulder Police Department potentially in April or sometime soon. I don't see that on the future agenda topics yet. I don't need an answer right now. I'm just remembering what we talked about before.
It will be, and there was a meeting that we were supposed to have with the PD to do that, but it got canceled, so we're rescheduling it so we can get onto the agenda.
All right. Anything else from anybody? Okay. Well done. Hutch?
No last words.
No last words. Do you have a last motion to adjourn?
So move.
Second.
And Nicole says, thank you, Tab and staff, truly an honor to witness your care and concern for our city's something or other. But thank you, Nicole Spear, for joining us this evening. We do like to have council members see what we do.
Thanks, Nicole.
Thank you, Nicole. Did someone second Hutch's
Yes.
motion? Thanks, Ryan. All right, we are adjourned. And we will see you hopefully as a team of 5 next month. And Hutch, I'll see you out there.
Righty ho. I'll see all of you guys around.
Yeah, there.
Take care. Have a good night.